very real prospect of a new world order. The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
Well, it doesn't show. How can I see this ain't knowing that you're right, blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon out of the sky and rock
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. A special one today. I was just sent and got to watch a new film. A new film that is actually adopted the name of a book by another friend of mine, Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. And Bill Cooper, as you may know, was probably one of the most ride-on talk show hosts, shortwave broadcaster out there. Maybe a little, even a little bit more accurate than Tex Mars. Certainly had more experience in the naval intelligence than I did, and we got along. And in 2001, we discussed on my AT&T cell phone, the one that almost got me killed. We discussed putting our magazines together. He had Veritas, I had the Free American. We discussed putting that together. A week later, he was shot by police in Eager, Arizona. Now, the film that I've got by the same name it features Charlie Daniels and a lot of other people. And the thing that has been amazing is that many of the people, a lot of the people that are featured in this film, or will be featured in the films to follow, were people I interviewed. People like Joan Veon, who attended every UN conference out there. They have done an excellent job of interviewing these people and making them a part of the film. And the gentleman that introduces it, after Charlie Daniels comes on, looks just like George Washington. And that's my guest today. Hello, Mark. How are you?
I am very blessed. It's so good to be on your program. Thank you for what you do.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. Mark Collins, and happens to be almost a neighbor of mine. I mean, you know, as we use the term rather loosely in Texas, since it's further from Texarkana to Brownsville than it is from Texarkana to Chicago. So the term neighbor is used loosely. But if you don't mind, Mark, I'd like to play...
Yeah, I had a truck driver.
What's that?
Yes, I said I had a truck driver one time tell me that he had a little point. He said the sun rose and the sun set, and I ain't out of Texas yet.
Yeah, here I am in Texas yet, the way I heard. I'm familiar with the same poem. Let's hear from Charlie Daniels for just a moment. I'm going to play clips of this while we're having this conversation, because this is, I am just so amazed. I mean, I've known a lot of filmmakers. Aaron Russo was a friend of mine until he made the mistake of revealing the fact about the RFID chips, the Mark of the Beast chips, that Nicholas Rockefeller wanted to see that everybody in the world had one, so you do what we say or we cut your chip off and you won't be able to buy or sell. It seems like I've heard that somewhere before. We've known about that for 2,000 years. We just couldn't figure it out. Hang on, Charlie Daniels.
Our America once inspired that great...
It's a church that is murmured across the lonely grave. Oh, hard times come again no more.
First, they came for the communists, but I was not a communist, so I did not speak out. Then they came for the socialists and the unions, but I was neither, so I did not speak out. Then they came for the Jews, but I was not a Jew, and so I did nothing. When they came for me, there was no one left. Martin Niemöller, Lutheran pastor, 1939 Nazi Germany. As your first president, I warned you that government was not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. History now is full circle. You must speak out, or like grass before the sigh, your generation stands witness to the death of a nation. Our revolution now becomes your revolution.
That was Mark Taylor, my guest today, as George Washington, and I understand from Anita, who will be on my show later, Mark, that you are almost a dead ringer from him. They made, she told me they made a plaster cast of Washington's face, and she says you guys are the same height and look very much the same, and you've done an excellent job in this film. And this film was written and directed by Chuck Uttermeyer. Is that it? Utteries?
Untersee.
And Anita is my guest. I assume that's, is that her husband?
That is correct. Yes, that is her husband of a few years. I won't divulge that. That's a family secret.
Okay. I say on this film here, on my website, below where it has your name and the links to this show, that I've watched this film. It is excellent. You need to buy this film and share it with everyone you know or care about. Many of the people interviewed here have been interviewed by me over the years. Joan Veon was a regular on my show and in my magazine. I started this magazine in the Militias in response to George Bush's statement about the New World Order that you heard on the beginning of my show here. You can hear those words every day on my show. Chill went up my back when I heard that the first time.
As it should have. You know, people don't realize what is slowly taking place in our country as our freedoms are eroded, and principles upon which we are founded are being simulated to this one world order, and it's so rapid. It's just mind-boggling to see how quickly they're able to just take our liberties and freedoms away from us.
I did a film a few years back called No Such Thing as a New World Order, and I still find that to be relevant and true today. The money changers Jesus ran out of the temple, they're still with us. They just changed the name of the temple.
Broke up.
I said the New World Order that they call it, again, that's a deception. That's a deception. The money changers that Jesus ran out of the temple are still with us. They just called they changed the name of the temple. They call it the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, or the World Bank, or the Bank for International Settlements, or you know, they just change the names. They change the language. That ain't a hunting rifle now. That's an assault weapon.
That's right. That is so true.
Now, tell me about how did you get into this? How did you meet these people? You play a wonderful part.
It was a wonderful thing. I was. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'll listen to you. Go ahead.
You're breaking up.
All right. Let me tell you what. I'm gonna. I don't know. I don't know exactly what we're doing here. Am I still breaking up for you? I'm gonna.
Yeah, you just came back.
Okay, we'll try it here. If it breaks up again, tell me. I'll hang up for a moment and I'll call you right back on my other computer.
Okay. Yes, I lost you there for a second. You know, you had asked how did I get involved with Behold a Pale Horse.
Yes.
I was blessed to be George Washington in a 13-part miniseries for the History Channel called The Revolution. And Chuck and Anita were considering recreating the crossing of the Delaware scene from our history. And as they were doing that, they happened to be watching the History Channel, watching the Revolution, and they saw me as Washington. And Chuck turned to Anita and said, "Hey, I vote. See if he's available." Well, so he calls New York Artists and Pictures, who developed that film for the History Channel out of Manhattan. And they said, "Who is this guy? Is he still available?" Come to find out, they said, "Well, he lives in San Antonio, Texas." So that blew them away because they live in Fredericksburg. Yeah. So via way of New York City, they found George Washington was their neighbor, as you just spoke of, in the Texas standard of the word neighbor. And so they contacted me, and we hit it off. We were like-minded. You know, we were both concerned with what we were seeing taking place in our nation. And so I think it was just it was providence, as Washington would clearly say, that guided us together. And I have so enjoyed and been honored to be a part of this project. I think, as the name says, Behold a Pale Horse, America Aflame, that has two meanings. First of all, we're burning like Rome if we don't be careful. And then also, I'm seeing an awakening, if you will, in our nation of people that are realizing that our freedoms are truly going away. And if we don't do something, we will be like every other country, which is the desire of many that are in power, unfortunately.
You know, I've told people for the last 20 years that I've been doing this show that any time a communist regime takes over a country, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Russia, you know, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. They go after the intelligentsia next. That's anybody that's smart enough to know what they're doing. and learned enough to know what they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. In Russia, after they used the police to disarm the people, they murdered the police, and that's probably the bodies that you see stacked in these old films.
Yes.
We are in that situation now. I just a couple of years ago, I did a film called 10 years ago. I did a film called True Face of FEMA that Colonel John Brinkerhoff was lecturing law enforcement in Albuquerque, and he said, in case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, an atomic attack, or an earthquake of sufficient magnitude along, say, the New Madrid fault line, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. And I thought, wow, you mean some of us won't line up on the Kmart parking lot to get vaccination for a disease that's been eradicated in this country for 100 years? You think?
Yes. Amen. Yeah, you know, the attack on our firearms is a great litmus test to how those erosions are taking place. You know, you go back and our founding fathers had a firm grasp on what the Second Amendment actually meant. George Washington, he said, the very atmosphere of firearms anywhere and everywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place of honor with all that is good. You look at how our present government and media paint the Second Amendment. And here's our founding fathers understanding that to be a free people, you have to have those teeth, if you will, to be able to stand up against tyranny, because tyranny will come. It's the erosion, you know, the two despot mind of man. It's one of the beginning principles, and there are those narcissists, as we see them, unfortunately, in our government today. They intend to rule. They intend to be good rulers, but they intend to rule, as our founder said. And it's very unfortunate that more Americans don't realize that.
Well, one of the problems I have is that I volunteered for Vietnam to go fight communists when I was 17 years old. But I read the Constitution, I read the Citizens Rule Book, I read the Communist Manifesto, and I came to the conclusion that every plank on the Communist Manifesto was intact in America today. But there's also the we didn't heed the warnings of Thomas Jefferson, who told us again in the day of George Washington, one of our founding fathers, that if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered. And so, are we under communism or are we under fascism? It doesn't really matter. It's the same way I referred to the Republicans and Democrats. And by the way, George Washington, did we lose you? Did I lose you? Okay, they're interfering with our Skype again. Do I have you back, Mark? I do now. Hang on a minute. Let me take this. The lines just went down. All the lines just went down. I've got Mark up on the other phone, Dave. You can take him off. Just bring up Crusade.
Okay, got somebody calling me for Reno. Do I?
No, that's all right. No, stay right where you're at. Stay right where you're at. Stay right where you're at, and Wolf Spirit will take you off, and we'll leave Crusade on. So I've got two two lines in on one other computer, and you were here on my other one. So, but this happens a lot. This is we can thank Homeland Security or the fusion centers, which sprung out of Senate Bill 1959 to combat us homegrown terrorists. If you recall about that, homegrown terrorism, they wanted to stop it in advance.
Yes.
But maybe the sound will be better out here. My apologies for any disruptions. But
no problem.
It's we're really in a war here, and you know, the enemy. It's the same enemy that financed the British to come over here, that backed the genocide of the Indians, of the Native Americans.
Yes.
And the empire on which the sun never sets, we're still paying Social Security to the empire that the sun never sets on, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's still alive and kicking, for sure.
They have just tried to use our army, and been pretty successful at it. We haven't had a declared war since World War II. And World War I and World War II and the whole Cold War. And Brinkerhoff in my film True Face of FEMA, he refers to the fact that we're in a war now, and it's unlike any other war. It's going to be fought on the American soil, and the enemy's weak, so the enemy doesn't have tanks and planes and helicopters. The enemy is, I think he was talking about us, the American people.
Yes. Oh yeah, I think so.
And shortly after I released that film, within a month or two after I released that film in my magazine, they tapped my phone. If you remember, in April of 2004. March, I put building number 7 on the cover. April, the New York Times broke the story about George Bush allowing the NSA to tap everybody's phones long before Snowden ever showed up on the scene. And in May 20th, my phone was tapped, and I had accident arranged, and I was kept drugged in for 3 months in 3 hospitals, until they finally took me off all the morphine, the Halcyon, the Haldol, the Valium, and I only had 3 broken ribs and a $750,000 hospital bill.
Oh wow!
So evidently they don't like what I've been putting in the Free American for 20 years.
Yeah, probably not.
Now let's play a little bit more of this. The opening of this was you walking out of George Washington's home. I'm assuming that's what that was.
It was actually to portray a colonial home, but it was not actually Mount Vernon.
Okay, all right.
You know?
Now this is Joan Veon, who was on my show. She's one of the first presenters here, and she was right on. This woman, folks. If you don't know who Joan Veon is, she went to every UN conference, every world meeting out there. Here's what she has to say in this film.
People would never believe me if I told them that world government is not coming, it's here. I have covered 105 global meetings. I've interviewed presidents and prime ministers. I've read tens of thousands of pages of their documents. This is not fiction. This is fact. If you tear down the barriers between the countries of the world, and there is this, I call it mafia, this powerful mafia above the countries of the world They are coming down through sustainable development in the United Nations and all kinds of control to take the soul of the world.
Now here is Charlie Daniels that I talked about earlier. Let me let him get his say out, and then I'll bring you right back up.
I can't hear what he's saying.
What's that?
I say I can't hear what he's saying, so you'll have to prompt me.
Charlie Daniels?
Yes. I can't hear any of the recordings of your play.
Okay, well, all right. They will be able to hear him. It'll be up on the thing, but he's this is just the introduction to the movie, following Joan Veon, and
okay.
I hopefully I don't know why it's not coming through to you, but let me try it again here. Well, the audience will get it. Hang on, and then we'll be right back. We can still hear you.
Nations without borders.
And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them o'er the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Revelation 6:8.
America's under judgment. The Republic is in distress. Listen to her cry.
All right. Well, that wasn't Charlie. That was a general, and this is the opening of the film. It says it's dedicated to family and those patriots who join in defense of the Republic, so that we might live as free men under God. Mark, I mean, this is the theme through the whole thing, and unlike so many other films, they're not trying to scare you here. They're just trying to inform you, and they are trying to empower you, and it's kind of what I've always tried to do. I don't want you to be afraid of these bastards. I want you to rise up. I want you to band together. I want you to talk to your neighbors. I want you to figure out how you can be more self-sufficient. I've told people, if you can grow your own food and generate your own power from your roof, you don't need the government, the energy companies, the oil companies, the Monsantos out there for nothing. You don't need the bankers, and that's what they're scared to death of. They don't want us to be free. They don't want us to be self-sufficient. And the basis of every civilization is the self-sufficient family farm. And that's why they're going after right up in Arlington. They some people had put together a nice little community they called the Garden of Eden. They were growing their own food, feeding everybody, feeding their neighbors, and SWAT teams were running on them. Didn't find any pot, didn't find any drugs, didn't find, and still they pointed guns at them and put them in handcuffs to stop them from what? Growing tomatoes?
Amazing, isn't it? It is just incredible. You know, you see this encroachment, and the real fundamental problem is, and I think they unpack it so well in the film, is that our Constitution is that foundation to our republic. And too many Americans are not educating themselves as to just to be able to know what it says and compare that to what our government is doing now, and then see how they have encroached on, worse than that, just totally steamrolled our Constitution. And so many of the things that we see today are not constitutional.
No, it's not. And I took an oath to defend the Constitution when I was 17 years old. I read the whole thing. And I also read the Communist Manifesto, abolition of private property, heavy progressive income tax, abolition of all rights of inheritance, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels, central bank, government control of communication, transportation, government ownership of factories and agriculture, government control of labor, corporate farms, regional planning. Agenda 21. This is one of the things they talk about in the film today. Agenda 21. And of course 10, government control of education. I call it the public fool system.
Amen. That's where it's at. You know, one of the great parts of the film is they recreate some of the scenes from the Alamo, which, you know, there's one of the things that really jumped out at me, is it shows they recreated Travis drawing his lion in the sand.
Yes.
And those that will fight with me to cross that line. And then he turns to the camera with these defenders of the Alamo behind him, looks straight into the camera, and says, and now it's time for all Americans to draw such a line in the sand. And that is so true. And then toward the end, he says, no is a powerful concept.
That's right. I exercised the right to say no after I learned that we have the most successful voluntary income tax out there. I decided I didn't want to volunteer anymore.
Yeah, don't pay it and see how voluntary it is.
Well, I haven't for 20 years. And unlike Bill Cooper, they haven't succeeded in killing me yet.
Yes, that is so sad.
But
yeah, it would take somebody to stand up and say no, and I appreciate you being willing to be the tip of the spear, and there are so many others that are rising up and saying enough is enough.
I refer to myself as the canary in the coal mine.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and another aspect of who you are and who we need more of, near the end of the film, Charlie Daniels says we need 1,000 Paul Reveres. And that's who you are. You're that man championing, saying that, you know, they're coming. They're coming for your freedoms. They're coming for control of your family's mind, your finances, who you are, your ability to take care of yourself. They're coming for all of that. And we need 1,000 Paul Reveres. Well, look at who Paul Revere was. He was just a common citizen that was part of an organization called the Committee of Safety and Correspondence, as there were throughout the 13 colonies. And that was the core of what made our freedoms possible through revolution, is they got together and said, hey, what's going on in your area? And they stayed in communication. And part of one of those groups was called the Sons of Liberty. A lot of people don't know. They've heard of the Sons of Liberty. They don't know that they were an organized entity that was found throughout the colonies in these committees of correspondence and safety. They gave us the Boston Tea Party. They gave us one if by land, two if by sea. See, it was that communication aspect, not having cell phones, not having the media that we have today. They had organized this system to where they could spread the news and watch out for each other. And that's what it's so exciting to see that developing in our nation. If we can quit infighting, we will be a force to contend with.
Divide and conquer is one of the oldest maxims in warfare, all the way from China, from Sun Tzu. The divide and conquer, and I've really tried to tell people that, man. You know, the whole term Republican and Democrat is two wings of the same bird, and the bird's a global vulture. It ain't an eagle. And
yeah, that's right.
George Washington, the character that you portray in the film, was our last president that didn't belong to a Republican or Democrats, and that's the same term can be used for the whole stage Cold War. Oh, you know, I'm a communist. Oh, you're a fascist. I'm a communist. I'm a fascist. You know, two wings of the same bird, folks. And after I saw the murder of the children at Waco, and I started the militias around the country, and then I watched them murder more children in the Murrah building, and tried to blame it on people like me. And I also, at the same time, I started to Free America, and I've been under attack ever since. But folks, in this latest issue, which is the volume number 9, January 1st, 2014 issue of the new revived, back from the dead like Lazarus. I put in what I've had in that magazine for 20 years. I'd like to share that with you, Mark.
I would be honored, please.
The Free American remains committed to bringing the truth to the American people. We believe that in a free society it is the job of the press to be the watchman of the government. It then falls upon the people, being fully informed, to decide what action they must take to preserve and defend their liberty. The Free American is unabashedly pro-American. Too many of our ancestors fought and died to protect our Constitution, the oldest in the world, to ensure that we would retain those liberties spelled out in our Bill of Rights. Based on the knowledge we have compiled over the last years of publication, we believe there is a verifiable, well-documented plan to force Americans into a global government complete with one world banking, global ID system, an international police force, and a disarmed populace. This is unacceptable to us personally and incompatible with our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Those who advocate such a global system and the dismantling of our Bill of Rights are either misguided, uninformed, or totally knowledgeable traitors to this country. We will expose them. The Free American is not affiliated with any political party, religious sect, secret society, cult, club, or movement. We do not advocate violence, but we stress the right of self-defense and the individual's right to bear arms, to be free of intrusive government, to privacy, and the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness.
Amen. That'll preach. You know, I had some guests from out of town the other day, and I took them down to the Alamo, and guess what I saw sitting in front of the Alamo? I actually took a picture of it. I can send it to you.
Yes, go ahead. What?
And on the door says Federal Service Police. They are here. This illegal, unconstitutional police force.
Repeat that. You broke up just you broke up just a little bit on that. Hang on a minute. Let me see where this is. Okay. There's a problem with the call on one of these. Again, this is what they do. Your federal police, your fusion centers interrupt, interfere, and
yes.
let me get that back. That's our other line here. I can still hear you.
Okay.
They haven't cut that down yet.
Okay, I've got Nevada calling me. Do I want to go to that line?
Okay, I've got you back here. That's all right. No, don't stay right here. Stay
okay.
right here.
Okay.
We got. I'll bring this back up again. Your phone will ring, but don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, no problem.
I'm trying to get it back here. Your line's busy. Okay, did I get you back, Dave?
I'm here. I don't know.
Okay. I've got Mark's still up with me. Mark's still up. The only thing we need is Crusade, and Mark's still with me.
Yes.
Okay, I don't need that. We've already got you. Okay, we got Snap, still another. Hey, hold on, guys. Again, we're trying to get this. Alright, trying to get you back up, Dave. Sorry about that. They're working overtime today. They don't like the show. They won't like the film either, I'm sure.
No, I'm not thinking so.
Hopefully I'll be able to meet you with the debut on 30th up there in Austin, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm looking at Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg?
Yes. Yeah, it's in Fredericksburg on Monday.
Fredericksburg on Monday. All right, we'll try to make that. And I do have Wolf Spirit back up, so we're still on the air, despite their best efforts. Now, let me play just a little bit more from this film that we're talking about.
Yes.
I am not a Democrat and I am not a Republican. I'm affiliated with no party. I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian. What we're witnessing is spiritual warfare.
When I was a boy, things were pretty much like those wonderful Norman Rockwell images of 30s America. First things I remember are frosty Carolina mornings with a cheery fire crackling in my mama's big black wood cook stove. I remember snowflakes as big as goose feathers and a moon the color of new-made country butter and a night sky like diamonds against black velvet reaching from horizon to horizon. I remember Sunday school and kneeling at the cross and trying to imagine what God looked like. Sunday dinner and short pants and haircuts and a little puppy my daddy brought home to me. And I remember love. I remember sitting with my granddaddy on the front porch and watching the last of that magnificent southern sun bleed away into the twilight sky. I remember awesome steam-puffing tin-wheel locomotives and the conductor's watch looked as big as one of my grandmother's biscuits. I remember my mother smiling in her red and white checkered dress, and Christmas always seemed so far away. Yes, I remember you, Carolina, grand old lady of the South. I remember you as home. But today, something's wrong, and we all know it. I'm Charlie Daniels, and I'm here to tell you about it. It's been...
Yes, sir. We just played the Charlie Daniels. He played the fiddle a little bit, and he talking about his growing
Thank you.
up.
I'll call you.
What's that?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, he was just a clip from the film. He played his fiddle a little bit and talked about growing up in that Carolina morning around Christmas.
Oh, yes.
And you know, and said something's wrong here. Something's wrong here.
Yes. Charlie did such an exceptional job. He's an incredible man.
He did. I do him in karaoke.
Yes.
I'm just a simple man. I'm just a simple man. But we also, and I'm not sure exactly what this man's name is. He appears right there at the front, and I think he's dead now also. But he said he just repeated the words that I put in my magazine 20 years ago. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am a Christian.
Oh, that's General Boykin.
General Boykin, yes, sir.
Yes, that's General Boykin. That's it. He's still alive and kicking.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, and doing and kicking pretty hard too. Yeah, he's a force to contend with, for sure. I've got a great story about the filming with Charlie Daniels if you want to ask me about it when we get back on.
Yeah, we're back on. We're back on. Go ahead, take off, run with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. We're running. We're recording. Everything's working for a moment or two, anyway.
While we were filming, we went up to a state park and filmed in a beautiful cabin. That's where you see Charlie sitting in the rocking chair in front of the fireplace. I mean, it was just it was America, you know. And when we had a break in the filming, he walked outside, and here comes a bunch of prisoners in their orange suits, and they're being used to clean the park. So what does Charlie Daniels do? He wades off in the middle of them guys, starts asking their names, introduces himself, tells how the Lord has changed his life, and asks, "Could I pray with you boys?" And you know, well, sure. So he circles them up, and they all holding hands. So here's Charlie Daniels in his big 10-gallon hat in the midst of this wave of orange jumpsuits praying for him. I thought, wow, you know, that's just amazing. what he is and what a national treasure Charlie Daniels is, and it was just such an honor to have him part of our film.
What are you doing New Year's Eve?
All right, mute the mic, Dave. Mute the mic. You're coming, you're bleeding through again. I don't care what you're doing on New Year's. I'm going to be doing the same thing I'm doing here now, anyway. And Charlie Daniels, I mean, he's such a powerful presence, and he's got the name. He's got the name.
Yes. And I guess you mentioned that he actually penned a song, Pale Horse Rider, for the film. And that's very exciting. That's the film, or the music that you hear at the end of the film, as he unpacks basically everything that the film talks about so beautifully in a song called Pale Horse Rider. And so you will hear that in the film. That's another unique aspect of it. But back to what I was saying earlier about really look at the men that gave us the freedoms we have. They were ordinary citizens. You think about those 56 men that met and gave us the Declaration of Independence. And they were farmers and merchants and lawyers and physicians, Benjamin Rush. It's just incredible how they came together and said, you know what? God intended something different. And they stood up for those things, willing to give even their very lives, as many of them did. I think 9 of those 56 lost their lives during the Revolution. 17 of them lost everything they had. When the lost heart, having a vision for those that come after us, willing to sacrifice of our own lives so that the next generation can live better. And that system worked for over 100 years in this nation until we became so greedy that now what we leave our children and our grandchildren is an IOU. As long as I get my check, I don't worry about where it comes from. But we're actually taking the inheritance of our children and our grandchildren. And we need to wake up to that. We need to educate people to that. There's no free lunch. Someone is going to have to pay for the things that we are doing in this nation now. And it's so sad, we name generations. A lot of us are baby boomers. There's the X generation and the Y generation. You know what they're calling the little ones that are at our knee right now? They're calling them Generation Zero. Because for the first time in American history, we are leaving the next generation in poorer condition than we found this nation. We're leaving them zero equity financially, socially, intellectually, morally, and we're doing that because we just don't have that vision for posterity that our founders did. John Adams, our second president, and George Washington's vice president, he said these words. He actually wrote a note to us. He said, "Posterity, you will never know what it cost my generation for your generation to enjoy the freedoms that you have." And that is so true. He was reading our mail. He knew that we would become lax. We would become comfortable with the blessings that we've had through the sacrifice of many generations. We need to stand up and do our part to make sure that we change the name of that generation to the next nation.
One of the things that really kind of frosted me, when we elected Barack Obama, a Democrat, as George Bush was walking out of the White House, he gave the bankers that loaned us, he borrowed the money from the bankers, gave it back to the bankers, and I said my grandchildren, will never be able to pay off the interest on that debt. $2 trillion. Yes. That was enough money to pay off every mortgage. And if George Bush had given it to the American people, let the American people give it back to the bankers, and take back possession and ownership of their homes, the banks still would have had their money, and every American would be sitting free and clear on a home that he finally owned.
But that's not the plan of a tyrant.
No, it's not. No, it's
not the plan of a tyrant. You know, it is one of the most incredible documents that I encourage every American to go read is Washington's farewell address. In speaking to my grandmother, who passed at 98 a few years ago, she said when she was in school that Washington's farewell address was required memorization. Of course, like high school, she had to be able word for word Washington's farewell address. I got in school, and he is now 81. He said it was required reading. And you know, today it's not even in our book. There was a textbook came out back in '96. It had a page and a half dedicated to the life of George Washington, and 6 pages. Now, this is an American history textbook that our children use. A page and a half dedicated to George Washington's entire life. 6 pages dedicated to some lady named Marilyn Monroe. That tells you where things are in this nation today, and it is just incredible.
It's they don't want you to know your history, you know, and if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
That is absolutely true. Let me give you an example. You were just talking about Washington was the last president we had that was not a member of a party, and here's what he said. And he's reading our mail. It's 200 years later, word for word, his prophecy has come true. And he said these words. He said, it is a fatal tendency. A fatal is pretty serious. You just really unpack that word. It is a fatal tendency to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation the will of a party. Often a small but artful and enterprising minority, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government, afterwards destroying the very engine that raised them to unjust dominion. That is exactly what's happened in our nation, and Washington called it over 200 years ago. He warned us, but we're not teaching our children that.
No, we're not teaching our children anything at all. But by the way, folks, let me put in a little commercial here, because there is an alternative. I helped start it 20 years ago. It's called Timothy Bible College. It's called the Little Red Schoolhouse. It's a way to educate your children to get them their degree without ever having to put them in a Columbine or a Sandy Hook. And it's done right up there in Lockhart, Texas, by my friend Dr. Jake Wade. I got my bachelor's degree from him. As soon as I finish my course on eschatology, if I have the time to do that, I'll be working on my master's degree right now in political science. And you know, even the colleges, I call it the public school system. This is again on that 9th plank, government control of education. So it's not education anymore, it's indoctrination.
That's exactly right. Yes, so much so it's just incredible.
But there's alternatives.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I just said there's alternatives. There's alternatives. We got them, and you can find most of the alternatives. You can find the last 9 issues of the Free American up at freeamerican.com, and of course we've got links now to BeholdAPaleHorse.tv, and you can get a taste of this, folks, but you need to see the whole film. I went around and invited all of my neighbors over. Well, both of them, 2 of them. The other one, I had to walk away before I hurt him. But I invited them over to see the film. Here's the film, man. You know, you can get it up on Amazon. I've got links up to the book. Click on the book. On the cover, or the cover of the movie, click on and that'll take you right to Amazon. You can get the films on Amazon.com.
Yeah, it's a great film. A lot of great interviews, and like I say, it's not about scaring people. It's about making them aware of what's going on in our nation that is going to be our demise, as it has been for every other great empire of the world, in the fact that we do not honor God as we once did. You know, it's amazing the separation of church and state and how violent that has become and aggressive toward purging. It's not freedom of religion, it's freedom from religion in so many aspects. And you go back and look at the ideas that our founding fathers had, they're rolling over in their graves. You know, our third president, Thomas Jefferson, who is the champion, by the way, of all these separation of church and state folks, as he was president, did you know he moonlighted? He had a second job. Can you imagine the President of the United States moonlighting? He was the chairman of the school board for the Federalist City. And as chairman, this champion of separation of church and state insisted that you could use numerous different textbooks in your classroom. But if you wanted to be a teacher in the Federalist City in Washington, D.C., the Bible and the Watts hymnal had to be the primary textbooks that you used. Can you imagine the ACLU and all the other entities that would come against what today is the champion of separation in church and state? He required the Bible to be the #1 textbook in all classrooms. And that's the way it should be today. That's the principles that this nation was founded on. That's what made us great and blessed. And that's what we return back to if we're going to restore those freedoms.
Well, that's what Timothy Bible College is about. And I gave my friend Jake Wade a hard time. I said, Jake, I heard that you're a 501c3. I thought 501c3s weren't supposed to be able to even talk about political candidates or politics or anything like that. He says, not if you write your own 501c3. I wrote my own. I can talk about anything I want.
There you go. We are blessed, and but we have to rely on God. That's the foundational principle that you will find. Is we've got to go back. Charlie Daniels reads Chronicles, where it says, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will restore their nation." And that's what we've got to go back to, and we will be a blessed nation again.
Well, you know, I've tried to tell people that, you know, God's alive and well today. You know, maybe burning bushes are passé, but I believe God's alive and well on the internet. He brought me to you. I'm using the internet to communicate with you. I use the internet to find Anita, to find this film. And, you know, this is not about tearing everything down. This is about rebuilding on a basis. And God, it's real simple to me. God is the force that holds the atoms together, that determines what your DNA is going to look like. I mean, if you think about it, the DNA is constructed, that makes us, has to be created by God. You know, I've got a few divergent views. You know, if I said if you're omniscient and omnipotent and you know everything, you can do anything, and you're the only one of your kind in the universe, you might be bored to tears. So what do you do about that? Well, you create man, woman. You put a spark of your divinity within us that we call the soul, the conscience, ESP, and then you sit back, as Shakespeare said, the whole world becomes a stage, and he sits behind your eyes and my eyes and says, well, I wonder how they're going to get along. I wonder what Clay's going to how he's going to handle this.
Yes.
We're his entertainment, folks.
Yeah.
You know, we're his intrigue, we're his romance, And we've got free will, so we can decide whether we want to be good or evil. And a lot of people have, you know, they're in Hollywood, and they're in Washington, D.C., and they're in Rome, and they're in the city of London. They have chosen the material benefits of evil. And this is just my opinion. Not quite a preacher.
Yeah.
Come from a long line of them, but you know, you got free will, folks. You can decide whether you want to be. And you know, if you buy this movie, if you order this movie, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. You will be inspired. You will be and we'll be talking about it with Anita here in about 10 or 15 minutes. And what role does she play? What does she do besides being married to the director?
Oh, you're talking about Chuck?
Yes, Chuck's the director.
Yeah. Yes, Chuck is the director. So you were asking, what does Chuck do besides that?
No, what does Anita do? Anita's going to be on my show, not Chuck.
Oh yes, Anita is the jack of all trades, the organizer. You know, she puts together all the shoots. Anita is a very significant part of everything that you see in that film. You know, making the phone calls, setting up the shoots, and as I say, hotels, the food. Boy, she fed us good every day when we were on set for the different filming aspects. And Anita is really a sweet lady. She does a great job of being that support to Chuck. You know, as he's concentrating on making the film look and sound great, Anita's behind the scenes making everything else happen. So she is really a blessing and really sweet lady. You're going to enjoy your interview with her.
I will. I certainly will. She.
Yep.
This.
And she keeps Chuck on straight and narrow.
You know, this film,
so
folks. If you
you
get
know, back to what.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. What were you saying?
I just said if you get this film, folks, and you can order it from freeamerican.com, I would actually like to request that you spend $2.99 and get the issues of the Free American. It's remember, I have interviewed and I've got articles from these people all over. It's let me lose this again. Yeah, I lost the connection again. We've got this film is you share it, buy it and share it with as many people. Invite them over to sit down in your house and watch it with you. And I guarantee you they'll want to go out and get a copy of their own. This is just so much information, and Chuck has put it together so well. It's really incredible. He's put it together, and the people that he's chosen to speak. And this is just the first. And is this going to be a series? I believe it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, do you have the first one, or do you have the second one that is coming out? That's what we're going to go see in Fredericksburg.
I have the first one. I have the first one there. Okay,
you have the first one. Yeah, Behold a Pale Horse America's Last Chance, and then the second one is Behold a Pale Horse America Aflame. And I don't know what the future holds. There very possibly could be a third one coming out. We'll see. But it, like you say, it packs a lot of information. You know, one quote from Washington that I'd like to share. Listen to what he says again, very prophetic. In many of the things that Washington would say, the marvel of all history is the patience with which men and women submit to burdens unnecessarily laid upon them by their governments. And boy, isn't that so true today? You just look at everything from Obamacare to these infringements on our privacies. And most Americans just say, well, I guess it's necessary, as they give up those freedoms and become this corporate world government. We're no longer a citizen of America, and it's very sad. Back to you.
Yes, sir. You're right. And I remember after 9/11, they came on television and said, you know, how much of your freedoms are you willing to sacrifice for security? And again, I was screaming at the television, none.
Yeah.
None. You know, in my film True Face of Female, I said you got about as much chance. This war on terror is a war against anyone, anywhere in the world that doesn't want to go along with the one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers. And
yeah.
I'm one of those, and they certainly declared war on me. They certainly tried to silence me. They've tried to stop me. They've tried to discourage me. They probably were instrumental in taking my family away. And, that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing the interview with Anita, because I know the kind of pressure that is put on our wives when we're active here. I know so many patriots that their marriages were broken up. Carl Klang, who did wonderful music, who plays the music for the beginning of my show. John Trockman, wife driven off. My wife was threatened by her father, who kind of got fired from the government, from Assistant Secretary of Agriculture, for accepting gifts from Billy Saul Estes right here in Texas. And he told her if she came back to me after the accident, he would disown her. She chose to work for him, not to work with me, not to support me.
Oh, wow.
And,
yeah, that is very sad.
You know, so any of you people out there that are patriots and are trying to do the right thing and are fighting this battle, this is an eternal battle, man. This is a war of principalities. This is as the Bible tells us.
Yes, absolutely.
And as John Brinker from FEMA said, this is going to be a long war. It could be longer than the Cold War. And it'll be fought on American soil. Here is Homeland Security telling you 10 years ago why they were going to be stocking hollow point ammunition, 40 caliber ammunition, in enough quantities to have about a half a dozen bullets for every man, woman, and child in America. And folks, I know you think it can't happen here, but it is happening here. And these same people that are behind us that financed the rise of communism in Russia to form the Soviet Union, they went on to murder 60 million white Christian Russians who were never our enemy. They were murdered by their own government. And if you don't think it can happen here, I'm sorry. You're just flat wrong. It can happen here. It did happen here. Waco, Ruby Ridge, Columbine, all the things that instigated us, shook us out of our complacency. Do you want to wait until it happens to you? Do you want to wait until it happens to your family? To resist, to organize? And you don't have to jump out there with a gun and start shooting people. That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is buy this film, educate your people, put your kids into a homeschool, take them out of the public school system. And if your church ain't talking about this, if your church ain't talking, I've got it on the cover of my book here. Quote right from the Bible. 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us of the coming New World Order as the eighth beast and the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. Jesus told us that they were liars and of their father Satan. In this book, the past meets the future. 2,000 years ago, They told us in Revelations about the mark of the beast. Don't take the mark of the beast. But if you don't, you won't be able to buy or sell without it. And Aaron Russo, who happened to be Jewish, told you that in a conversation with Nicholas Rockefeller, that their plan was to put a chip in everybody's hand. So that's where your money is going to go. And they've even got commercials for it. 2,000 years, we wonder what the mark of the beast was. They've got commercials for it, Mark. Now, George used to forget his medications. Now, we've got HealthLink. All of his information is this little chip that tells the doctor what medicine he needs and how much is in his bank account.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that is unpacked very well, I thought, in the film also. They talk about it's about control. You know, the smart meters. That's something actually in our little community here in southeast Texas. Here we are, and one of my neighbors who was savvy, you know, found a tag on their front gate that they were soon going to be getting their congratulations, you're going to get a smart meter. Well, you better find out that a smart meter's not so smart. And how they're coming aggressively. They said, you know, we don't want it. And so they got a letter the other day that basically the power company is going to bring legal action against them because they have refused to take a smart meter. That's how aggressive this thing is getting.
Yeah, they also have gone after a woman in Florida who was off the grid. They went after the people up in Arlington because they were off the grid. They were growing food, not grass. And I told people the whole Liberty Village concept, if you grow food, not grass, and you put solar on your roof and solar and a wind generator on there to pump your water like we've done for hundreds of years, then you don't need the banks for nothing. That's called Liberty Villages Project, libertyvillages.org. And, you know, I've been working on this for 20 years, and this may have been when I came out with that whole concept for Liberty Village. And how we could set it up is using low-cost structures. You don't need a 2,000 square foot house alone, but if you got one, and you get out and you talk to all your neighbors, you show them this film and say, look, the best way I can think of that we can organize is locally. Let's take this block and plant food in the backyard and put solar on the roof and wind generators on the roof. Tell the neighborhood association, the old one, to take a hike. We're taking over. Talk to everybody and put it together. Work together. We can defeat them if we work together. Mark, I think we're just about out of time. You got 3 more minutes, and then I'm going to bring Anita up. But thank you so much for being on my show. Love to see you today if we can do that. If it ain't raining like hell here, I'll load the boys up and give them a ride on the Harley.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. I look forward to the film coming out. I'm praying that God will use this to change the hearts and minds of Americans and restore us. You know, Washington once said, happiness and morality, moral duty are inseparably connected. And so we must have that moral duty. Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. And that's what they're trying to do today, and it will not work. And if we don't turn to those founding principles, we're going to lose our freedoms. Thank you so much for what you do, for spreading the word, for being that Paul Revere. We just need 999 more of you, as Chuck says in the film. As Charlie Daniels says in the film. And so may the Lord bless you and your listeners, and may God bless America. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. We're looking forward to seeing you, shaking your hand. All right.
Have a blessed year. All right. Take care now.
See you later. All right. Now let me see if I can. You gotta wait. Stop. Let's add some people here. And okay. All right. Alright, let's see if we can get Anita up.
Hi, this is Anita.
Hi Anita, this is Clay Douglas. Welcome to the Free American show.
Yes.
I just got through interviewing Mark and talking with Mark, and it was a wonderful conversation. I played a few clips from the movie, but he wasn't able to hear the movie. So if you've got the movie up, and I had just played, let's see, where I got here. I don't know if you can do that from where you're at. And let me play. I just had...
he wasn't able to hear what? With the clips?
He wasn't able to hear the movie when I was playing. Now, I've got General Boykin up right now. Let me play just a clip from him. They can hear it on the other radio stations, and maybe you can hear this here. Tell me about it, but let me play just a clip here.
My great privilege to serve this nation in the uniform of the U.S. Army. Most of my time in the Army I spent in special operations. I was one of the original members of the Army's Delta Force. I commanded all the Army's Green Berets. I served a tour at the Central Intelligence Agency and finished my career as the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. I was a commander of the Delta Force in the events that we now know as Black Hawk Down. I'm Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, U.S. Army retired. One of my jobs when I was in the Army was I ran the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Bragg. That's the school that trains all the Army Special Forces. And one of the things that we taught there was insurgency and counterinsurgency, and much of the insurgency was focused on Marxist insurgencies. I see things in America today that just greatly disturb me. And I see a pattern here. And that pattern is a pattern that you see in Marxist movements. And you can see it in Cuba, you can see it in Venezuela, you could see it with Mao Zedong, you could see it with Joseph Stalin.
Could you hear that, Anita?
No, I couldn't.
Okay, well, that was General Boykin, and hopefully it will be up on all of our films so you can listen to them later and let people know about this show, which is going to be recorded for YouTube, and it's being recorded on Wolf Spirit Radio, it's being recorded on Blog Talk Radio. But I am so impressed with the way this has been put together, because many of the people that you've got here on this, I've interviewed at one time or another. I never got to interview General Boykin, and I haven't interviewed Elena Chatia. She's a Romanian immigrant that escaped from communism and talks about what happened here. How did you find all of these people? Your husband Chuck directed this. How did you guys locate all of these people? And you know, to bring Charlie Daniels in this, I played a little clip from him sitting around with his fiddle, talking about what his life was like back in Carolina with his grandmother in the cabin. And you know, I've really said that we really need to take a step backwards you know, that my concept for Liberty Villages that I tried to start 20 years ago, I said, we've already got them. They're all small town America. I mean, these small towns in America were surrounded by farms, and if you can grow your own food instead of grass in your backyard, and you can generate your own power from everything God gave us, the wind and the sun, with the technology we have today, you don't really need this communist-style government. Give me a little bit of your history here. How did you find these people? What made you decide to stick your neck out? And anytime you start telling the truth about what's going on, the powers that be have a tendency to come down on you. They certainly did that to me. Go ahead, Joan.
Well, my husband and I were in the film business for many years, and commercially, doing commercials for cars and like Ford and Chevrolet and those kind of places. And we retired from that. That's kind of a young person's business, but we were interested in just taking it easy. We moved back to Texas. We have been building our little ranch out here and doing like you were talking about with we're living off the grid with a windmill and solar power and learning about gardening. It's not as easy as it sounds, especially in Texas. Anyway, Chuck was discouraged with a project that he had put together about Texas in the war and the current administration came into power. We lost our funding. Our investors became fearful, and so we lost that funding, and Chuck was left with nothing. So he was, meditating and praying on it, and actually was kind of raging about it, and it came to him, we believe providentially, tell the story. And he walked around going, tell the story? What? Well, actually, what he had been doing for months beforehand was gathering information on all these incredible topics that he had discovered about the loss of our American sovereignty and so many of the topics that you cover on your show. And he had put them all in notebooks, and he was trying to press them on people as everywhere we went. He was handing them these notebooks and going, look at that, oh, you have to read this, you have to find out about this. And quickly, no one wanted to talk to us anymore. We didn't get invited to any, we were so obsessed with this, with these new revelations. And eventually, I said to him, no, I think maybe you should make a film about this. It took a while to kind of sink in. So that's what we set out to do. We really didn't know any of the patriots who were in this movie initially. We didn't know them personally. But started with a conference that Pastor Butch Paul was putting on. This is back in 2009, and there were, Veon was there, Joyce Riley was there, who was a supporter from the beginning. Who else was there? I'm sorry, my memory is not that great from that long ago. There were a lot of pastries as we got started. We filmed them that were there that would agree to it because they didn't know who we were. But they did let us interview them. Todd Gunn, of course, knows so much about the of the New World Order and powers to be that are behind it. So we got hours of interview with her that were just priceless. And that's how we started.
Now, hold on just a second.
I can go on about how we got the rest.
Well,
that was the seed of beginning. Well, actually, what I should say at the beginning was just in the script. And the script was his vision of the topics he wanted to cover. He didn't write what the people should say, but he wrote their narration in between, which is what Charlie Daniels is in it for, which is to pull it all together with a little summary of each different topic, and then a different and he's intercut with a line to keep the Romanian immigrant who talks about
Charlie did a wonderful job of pulling this all together. Yeah, Charlie did a wonderful job of putting this all together. We got a few breaks here now and then. You might not be able to hear me now and then. The fusion centers don't like this information getting out. And we do have links to your site here. And this interview and that with Mark will be up on Blog Talk, up on Free American, up on YouTube, and a number of other things. But just for instance, I've lost one of my stations here while we were talking. Just while we were talking. This I have told people what you're doing. What you're doing is what I've been trying to do. It's what I've been trying to do for the last 20 years. And it was a great feeling for me when I got your video to get to see Joan Veon again. Joan has spoken at my conferences. She's been on my radio show many, many times. And now she's dead. But to see her still alive and still communicating on your film was a really wonderful emotional experience for me. And we've got
I can understand why.
We've got Wolf Spirit back up again. And I've lost many friends. My friend who you are using the title of his book, Bill Cooper. I met with Bill many times. We had just talked about putting our magazines together. He was publishing Veritas. We were both broadcasting on worldwide Christian shortwave radio. And we talked about, over the phone, talked about putting our magazines together. And a week later, he was dead, shot by the police, set up and shot and killed. And of course, a year and a half later, they tried to kill me. So we're in a war here, and this film that you've made, I mean, it's so inspiring because it doesn't try to scare people, a la Alex Jones. I don't know, you know, be afraid, be very, very afraid. Divide and conquer is the oldest maxim in warfare. You're a Republican? Well, I'm a Democrat. And General Boykin kind of really made that point at the beginning of the film, and this is one of the clips that I played. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
And George Washington wasn't either, and Mark pointed that out. So, watching this film, you want to go out and do something. You want to, and you can do something, folks. I mean, all you got to do is go out and tell people, hey, go to Amazon.com. Hey, go to the Free American. I've been talking to this, to you, these people out there, with the magazine, with this radio show, with my films. I've got 3 or 4 films out. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting. And what I filmed 10 years ago is what you're seeing now with the militarization of the police forces. In case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't line up on the parking lot to get a vaccination for a disease that's been eradicated for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think this film, I'm urging everybody to go to Amazon.com to order this film. You can rent it, you can order it on Amazon, and I believe they can get it from your website too, can't they?
Yes, our website is www.BeholdAPaleHorse.tv, as in television. And speaking of the title of the film, Behold a Pale Horse, we didn't even know Bill Cooper or have the book when we named this film. Of course, we have the book and know all about his story now. And but the title actually came from Revelations, or I should say, the Revelation of Jesus Christ. And the film is also one of the major themes, that we are in a spiritual battle. And the world has always been in a spiritual battle between the Prince of Peace and the Prince of Darkness. And the forces of darkness have always been trying to take over the world, and they still are. But we have a stronger power behind us, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ. And so we don't hammer that a whole lot in this movie, but in the Revelation that there are, of course, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and that Dr. Stan Monteith, who's in this film, talks about it and quotes the scripture, which I have in front of me, and I don't know it totally by heart, but the pale horse was the rider of death, and talks about famine and sickness and all the things that will come about with that. And it's kind of a dark, it is a very dark prophecy, but that is what is in store for our world, and unless you are a believer and follow the light. So that's kind of the basis of the problems. And our country was really the shining city on the hill. It was founded, although people don't realize it today, a lot of people today don't believe in the separation of church and state. That really is incorrect. And our new film, which is not out on DVD yet, points this out. We have a segment in there on the role of the church in government and the problems with 501c3. The Black Robe Regiment, which there is a modern day Black Robe Regiment, and that is the pastors who are preaching that the church should be speaking up and should be taking a role in government. I mean, we as Christians need to be involved in every aspect of government in terms of being leaders. So that's not what the modern day government wants or is even allowing, and those are some of the freedoms that we're losing. And it's important for us to be aware of that and speak out and not let it stop us.
One of the links on my website is for the Little Red Schoolhouse and Timothy Bible College. And that's put on by Dr. Jake Wade out of Lockhart, Texas. I helped him start it 20 years ago. If we were educating our children at home, take them out of the public school system, we wouldn't have to worry about Columbines. And you can get your master's degree from Timothy Bible College. I'm just finishing my course on eschatology right now to get mine.
Oh, well then you can quote the scripture.
No, that's Dr. Jake Wade. I'm still studying. I'm still learning. But the fact is that the 2,000 years ago they warned us about the mark of the beast. Don't take it, but if you don't take it, you won't be able to buy or sell. And we've been scratching our heads for 2,000 years, wondering what the hell they were talking about. Today, I said they've got commercials for it on television, George used to forget his medications, but now we got this little chip, this little RFID chip, and that tells the doctor everything's wrong with him, what medication he needs, and how much is in his bank account.
That's right. And Dr. Catherine Albrecht, who's a part of this movie along with Kay Beach, discussed the privacy and the RFID chip. And Catherine, you know, when we did that interview with her, of course, she's a very accomplished woman and speaker, and in fact, she was one of the very first interviews we did at Pastor Butch's conference, and she had a little Bible with her, and during the interview, she just whipped it out and opened it up to the scripture that says, you know, you will not be able to buy or sell without the mark. And now, as she pointed out, no one knew what that prophecy meant. It was confusing. How could that be? Well, now we have the technology and the will. People have the will to have that. So eventually, that's probably going to be. We will probably have to make a decision whether we accept that mark. And the mark meaning that we belong to, quote, the beast or the Antichrist. So, you know, there's a lot of layers in this. You can take out of it what you want. It's not a heavily, I don't believe it's a heavily scriptural movie, but for a society that never hears anything like that, it's kind of shocking when someone opens the Bible and reads a verse or two. That's just not done, especially in the movies. But that's what we're going to shock them in a lot of ways.
My friend Dr. Jake Wade, he pointed out one of the churches he was involved in and preaching at. He decided to go to another church and expand his ministry, and they told him he couldn't. They told him he couldn't do that, and put pressure on the other church. And he pointed out, well, maybe it's because the cornerstone of that church there was laid by the Masonic order. So it's got talks about the worshipful master on the cornerstone of the church, and that ain't Jesus. Yeah. So it's now tell me about this second film. Now I love this one. I'm going to watch it again and again and never over and over again because it's that important. And after I finished watching it, I went out and talked to neighbors on both sides of me here and suggested that they stop by my house, come over, and watch this film with me. To me, what you have succeeded in doing here is not making someone afraid, but encouraging them and showing them this is just history. If we learn from history, maybe we won't be doomed to repeat it.
Well, that's right, and one of the things that Charlie Daniels says is, let's ride, boys, we need 1,000 Paul Reveres. And that's what it's about. A lot of us are out in different areas. We have no one to talk to. We know that there's things wrong, and especially your listeners know that, and they might feel alone and alienated, but it's really not so. There are a lot of people out in the streets that they may not be as aware as you are, and they probably aren't. And that was the purpose of this particular film, was to wake up the uninitiated, wake up people who haven't heard about these things. It's not quite so hard-hitting as some of the other movies. It's more of a primer on these issues. It also goes heavily into 21, which is something they'll need to be aware of and work to get rid of.
Agenda 21, you're talking about Agenda 21, which is happening in every county around the state right now.
Yes, that's right. So we put them out about a year ago, and it like you said, it's available on Amazon.com. You can put in Behold a Pale Horse, Charlie Daniels, and it'll come up. Otherwise, Cooper's book comes up. But at any rate, we put the movie out. We never dreamed that we could get it in theaters because of the subject matter. This is not something that Hollywood wants out there. And so we just put it out there to the patriot market, basically. And we've sold a lot of copies of it. And a little bit Tea Party all over the country have shown it to their groups. Some churches, although churches are reluctant to speak because they don't think that they're supposed to, but that's all wrong. So, to make a long story shorter, the distributors of the movie 2016, Obama's America, which came out before the elections of 2012, saw this movie and said, we can get this in theaters, but it can't be the one that's already out on DVD, because you can't, theaters won't take it if it's already been sold as a DVD. So you have to change it. Well, we had so much material. Once we got going on these interviews, it was, unwrapping the layers of an onion. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. The story got bigger, and there was so much to cover that it couldn't fit onto one DVD. But the original DVD is about an hour and 40 minutes. So we were planning to release a part 2 and a part 3. It's all the interviews in. And when we got that news, decided bigger picture would be to release it nationally and get nationwide attention. And maybe we could become the common sense of our time, much like the common sense written by Thomas Paine pre-Revolutionary War. So this is about 8 or 9 months ago that we took all the best interviews from part 1. We took the best parts of it, which includes some of the Charlie's poem and Charlie talking about D-Day and some of the very touching things that he said, just down home, straight on country wisdom that he came up with, and Chuck came up with in his script. At any rate, we took those interviews. We took General Boykin and Elena Kita and some of those things, and Agenda 21, so the highlights of those interviews, and we intermixed them with a whole lot more. We've got Randy Weaver. It's just a haunting interview with Randy, and Randy Weaver, of course, was at Ruby Ridge, and his wife and baby were shot, and his son was shot and killed. They were all two family members were killed. Randy was shot. The baby was at his mother's breast and was shot. The baby was not shot, but the mother was and killed. And at any rate, that we got that interview intercut with Jack McLam, who is a police. He's got a radio show, and he is a retired police officer.
He's not doing the radio show anymore. A
lot of these patriots are just classic people who are, on their way out. They're, Jack has served a lot of years, and So he's not doing a show anymore.
No, ma'am. He had a stroke, and he is kind of settled down, and I think he's even moved back to Arizona. But I did several of his shows for him because he just wasn't able to do it, and now he's given it up entirely. But
well, that's why a lot of these interviews last week, because these people are gone. We won't have their knowledge and wisdom except for what's preserved on interviews and books. But that's a very haunting interview that'll be in the new movie, which is Behold a Pale Horse, America Aflame. Also included is Dr. Jerome Corsi on the North American Union, and Sheriff Wes who's sheriff in border town in Texas, talking about the border with a Minuteman. His name is also West, Milton West. Let's see what else is on there. I know I'm forgetting, but anyway, there's several more interviews added to the new one. Other, like I mentioned before, the Black Robe Regiment. There's a segment on the reenactment, a new reenactment of Muhlenberg General. Well, he wasn't a general, but Pastor Muhlenberg, who became a general in the Revolutionary War. Talks about the role of the church. And several other really wonderful interviews are in there in the new one. So that movie, America Aflame, we're going to be showing one time only in Fredericksburg, Texas on Monday, December 30th. That's this coming Monday night at the theater here in Fredericksburg. It's called the Fritztown Cinema. And showtimes, there's going to be...
What's the name of that cinema again, dear?
The theater is called Fritztown. The Fritztown Cinema. And the address there is 2254 South Highway 87. That's Fredericksburg, Texas, 78624. Showtimes are at 7:15 and 7:30. It's a 2-hour movie. And if you like the first movie, Behold the Pale Horse, America's Last Chance, the new one, America Aflame, is probably twice as powerful. It's moved much faster. There's nothing slow about it. We still have Joel Skousen in there. There's another little piece that Joel did on the coming World War III that's really scary. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Gerald Salente is still in there with his little Italian humor sprinkled throughout. So yeah, it is. It's quite the movie, and I think this event on Monday night, for anybody who's anywhere in the South Central Texas area, it might be worth your time to come. All the patriots around here will be there. It should be the social event of the of the day. Will be there.
Fredericksburg is that's about 30 miles out of Austin.
Full uniformish.
That's about 30 miles out of Austin, isn't it? Or is that out of San Antonio?
Well, no, it's about 70 miles west of Austin and about 50 miles north of San Antonio. So anybody in that area, it's going to be worth the drive to come over. I know it's a Monday night, but it's the holiday time, so let's get together. And
if I can get a babysitter or a dog sitter, I might come.
I know. I've got so many animals. It's so hard for me to get away, but sometimes I just have to do it. So, oh yeah, Sheriff Richard Mack is in the new one, short segment with him, and Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers is also in the new one. These names keep popping into my brain of who else is in there. So it should be a very fun event. So that's Monday night, December 30th at the Fritztown Cinema, 2254 South Highway 87, Fredericksburg, Texas. And the showtimes are 7:15 and 7:30.
So you got 2 theaters?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
But of course the movie that you have that's available on Amazon is a classic. It's probably going to become a collector's item because it'll be pulled off the shelf pretty soon when we get ready to release this other one nationally. We can't sell it on DVD until it comes out in theaters. So we'll probably take America's Last Chance off the shelf prior to the release of this new one.
Well, good. I always like to have collector's items here.
Well, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. But if you go on Amazon and read the reviews, they're mostly positive, and these are people who have just bought the movie. I don't know who they are. They just bought the movie and wrote a review. There's a few in there that say we're right-wing wing nuts. And, you know you're on the right track when you get that kind of review.
Well, I had this to say about it. I said, I've watched this film. It is excellent. You need to buy this film and share it with everyone you know or care about. Most of the people interviewed here have been interviewed by me over the years. Joan Veon was a regular on my show and in my magazine. I started this magazine of the Militias in response to George Bush's statement about the New World Order. You can still hear his words at the beginning of every show that I do. And of course then I've got what Amazon said about it, the looming world government, a world elite, the United Nations, loss of American sovereignty, the light of our shining city on a hill dims, Dissecting America for under judgment, country music legend Charlie Daniels is a primer for the uninitiated, explains the New World Order with biblical perspectives. We were born for such. And again, I'm urging everybody to read this. The links to Amazon, the picture of the DVD is up on my website, Free American Today. And I'd appreciate it if you right-click on your name or Mark Collins' name. You can send this show out to everybody and let people know. You know, this is a battle that I've been in for 20 years. And when I started the Free American, when I started the militias in New Mexico, I had this to say. I shared this earlier with Mark. I want to share it with you. That the Free American remains committed to bringing the truth to the American people. We believe that in a free society, it is the job of the people to be the watchmen of the government. It then falls upon the people, being fully informed, to decide what actions they must take to preserve and defend their liberty. The Free American is unabashedly pro-American. Too many of our ancestors fought and died to protect our Constitution, the oldest in the world, to ensure that we would retain those liberties spelled out in our Bill of Rights. Based on the knowledge we've compiled over the years, last years of publication, we believe there's a verifiable, well-documented plan to force Americans into a global government complete with one world banking, a global ID system, an international police force, and a disarmed populace. This is unacceptable to us personally and incompatible with our Constitution and Bill of Rights. Those who advocate such a global system and the dismantling of our Bill of Rights are either misguided, uninformed, or totally knowledgeable traitors to this country. We will expose them. The Free American is not affiliated with any political party, religious sect, secret society, cult, club, or movement. We do not advocate violence, but we stress the right of self-defense and the individual's right to bear arms, to be free of intrusive government, to privacy, and the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. I wrote that 20 years ago. It is still absolutely true today, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I agree with every word of it. And it's hard to believe how far we have fallen since 20 years ago. Every day I wake up and read something new that's so ridiculous. You think, how could this be? But it is.
Even today, I started doing I used to do it once a month. I'd print it. I'd have to start it a month beforehand. I'd start it up and I'd print it down on, put it in print and ship it off to Amazon, to Barnes & Noble, to Books A Million, and then you walked into the bookstore and bought it for $5 if you could find it, if it wasn't hidden behind the cookbooks. Today, after they tried to kill me 10 years ago, they silenced they stopped the magazine, almost stopped me, and I decided to cut out all of the middlemen So today I don't pay Hearst Paper Company for cutting down trees and providing paper. I don't pay UPS or the Postal Service to deliver tons of magazines. I don't give Barnes & Noble half of the $5 that I got for it. I put it up on the internet, on freeamerican.com, on libertyvillages.com, on Facebook, Free American 69, on YouTube, Free American 69. I put it all up on there for $2.99, and I suggest you buy one and then send it out, send copies of it out as a PDF file, send it out to everybody that you can. And I tell them to buy your magazine and send that out, or at least inform people about it. Invite people over to your house, let them see this, because you have captured everything that I said in this publisher's column 20 years ago. You've captured it in this film.
Well, thank you. I'm proud that we did that, and I think that we are taking for granted the fact that we are on the air right now. We're able to talk, and people are able to listen on the internet. We have the internet right now. We need to use it. We have the freedom of religion right now, and we need to take advantage of that. We still have our right to bear arms, at least in Texas we do. A lot of states have already succumbed to their so-called laws, and it's shocking to me that our country has fallen so far and has put up with so much tyranny for so long. It's time to stand up and say no. If we can't do it for ourselves, we need to do it for the future generations. Those children don't know anything about what we grew up with, and even when we were growing up, things were going wrong, but we didn't know it. And so it's just a sad day when it's come to the point that it has, and a lot of people are stirred up because of the current administration. But most people listening to the show know that it really is not. That is just a symbol or a puppet for these big global corporate interests who have structure in place that appears to be what we thought our government was supposed to be. We still have our elected representatives and all that. But the truth of it is that they're not listening, number one, and number two, it doesn't really. They're not making. I guess what I'm saying is it's all a sham. That it's not what it appears to be.
All right,
so,
we're out of time here, and want to thank you. Hopefully I can see you on Monday. I'm gonna really try to do that.
I hope so too. Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
God
Bye-bye
bless
now.
everyone out there listening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.